Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 8th of February, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I'm back today with a lot of bullish stuff to get through actually, after missing yesterday's episode. Had a lot of fun at the meetup that I went to last night, ended up speaking about a lot of things got to do with Firecaster and restaking and just like Ethereum generally for about, I don't know, maybe at least 30, it was at least 30 minutes or something like that on stage, and then obviously after during the networking, spoke to a lot of people, and it was just great. I mean, I always love going to these local meetups because it's just easy for me to go to. Great to meet local people and chat to them about all things, Ethereum and crypto and beyond. But anyway, moving on from that to today's news. So the first bit of news is more of just like a PSA that I wanted to remind people of. So the SEC again delayed a couple of ETFs today, spot ETH ETFs today, the Invesco and Galaxy ETFs. And then James Seifert says here, this is 100% expected and more delays will continue to happen in the coming months. The only date that matters for spot ETH ETFs at this time is May 23rd, which is, of course, Van Eck's final deadline date. And you can see all the dates here. I'll link this tweet in the YouTube description below. But when I kind of mean, what I mean by like PSA here is that I've said this many times before. The only date that matters right now is May 23rd. Literally nothing else matters. Like any of these delays that you see are totally normal. And I think the market knows that because of what happened with the BTC spot ETFs. Like they were delayed. And then obviously they got approved on Jan 10th, which was that final deadline that we spoke about for months here. Now, that's not the most interesting thing when it comes to the ETFs today. The most interesting thing was something shared by Eric Balkanos here, who said that ARK/21 shares filed an amended S1 for their spot ETH ETFs. Looks like they updated to be only cash creations and some other things that bring it in line with the recently approved spot BTC ETF prospectus. And now, remember, I did tell you guys that it's going to be much easier for these issuers to get these spot ETH ETF filings done than the BTC one because they're really just going to copy paste what they've got in their BTC one. It should be logically the same thing here. But also as part of this, I don't know if Eric Eric highlighted this, but someone else highlighted it, that I guess ARK put in there that they wanted to discuss with the SEC about having a staked ETH ETF as well. Now, I'm going to kind of say this now because I think this is going to be like the outcome here. A staked ETH ETF is not going to get approved alongside these things. All of these ETFs are going to be, in my opinion, normal spot ETH ETFs. There, as far as I know, does not exist any kind of regulation or any kind of, I guess, clarity around a staked ETH ETF. It would be very hard to get the SEC to approve that, given that they have gone after staking products specifically as being securities, like the staking products themselves. So I highly doubt, and I'm very certain on this, that there won't be a staked ETH ETF approved alongside the spot ETH ETFs. There may be a staked ETH ETF in the future, and I think Bankless did a podcast with someone from Franklin Templeton recently that talks about this, if you want to go check out and get her view on it. But yeah, I have full confidence that the only ETFs getting approved this year for ETH and maybe even next year are the normal spot ETH ETFs that will not be staked. They'll just be held by a custodian like the BTC spot ETFs are. But the most interesting thing about this is the fact that, remember, leading up to the BTC spot ETFs, we had a lot of this back and forth between the issuers and the SEC, amendments, discussions, all that sorts of stuff. And I said recently, both on the Refuel and in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, that once we start seeing this back and forth with the SEC around the spot ETH ETFs, that's when the kind of hype really starts. And that's when you'll probably see it kind of play out in the price of ETH. And if we're actually talking numbers here, if you want to be someone who looks at the charts and looks at kind of resistance levels for ETH, which, I mean, I'm not someone who really does that very regularly. You guys know I'm not a trader, but I like kind of paying attention to what people are kind of thinking about. If you look at the levels, I think 2,500 is the last level before, at least from what I've seen, the traders are all pretty much like in alignment that ETH could go to like 4K without any major pullbacks. And that's very similar to what we saw with BTC, where essentially it broke that 30K mark and then just went to 50K without any serious pullbacks, or at least like longer term pullbacks. If you bring up the chart, you can actually see these playing out. Now, what's going to be funny is that this will run up, obviously, to the ETF, and I fully expect the spot ETH ETFs to be a sell, kind of sell the news event again. But the thing is that, like, if it goes to 4K and then ETH sells down to what, like even 3K, which I think is a pretty steep sell. I don't think it'll sell down to that, but like, let's say it does. It's still been like a major move for ETH, because ETH did move alongside the BTC spot ETF price action as well. So if you bought ETH back when back when BlackRock filed for this BTC spot ETFs back in, what was it, June? And if I could bring up the ETH chart here on my other screen, just to give you an idea here. If you bought ETH then, which was, June, I'm just bringing it up here, June, you were buying ETH around $1,600, right? So if you count that as like the move to like 4K, yeah, it's a huge move based on the whole ETF move, which is, a very big move there. But I'm not one to kind of speculate on the short to medium term price of ETH. Obviously, I'm always about the long term, and obviously I believe in the long term ETH is going to continue to accrue value. But really, if you're playing the ETF trade, I think that the consensus is that you play it now, right? You basically buy ETH now, and then you sell it once the ETF is approved on May 23rd, the earliest possible date that we could expect an approval here. Which, I mean, I don't think is a bad bet. And then there's also a lot of people talking about the layer 2 tokens and stuff as well as being like ETH beta, where essentially they're saying, well, Dencun's coming, which I'm going to talk about in a sec, by the way. That's got EIP 4844 a part of it. That's like a hype trade that people are taking. And then obviously they're buying ETH as well to get exposure to that. As you guys know, I'm not a short to medium term guy. I do pay attention to this stuff because it's quite, it's quite interesting for me to just pay attention to this stuff. But yeah, I mean, the future hasn't not been brighter for ETH in a very long time, in my opinion, in terms of like long-term value accrual as well. And when it comes to L2 tokens, I actually am going to be giving a lot of opinions on this next week. So I'm recording a Bankless podcast next week, all about layer 2s and their respective tokens. I'm recording this podcast with the same people I recorded with in late last year for the ETH Bull Case podcast, which was with Mike Ippolito and Jordi Alexander there. And the fun thing is I'm actually going to be the bear on the L2 tokens. And I'm not going to say that I'm bearish on L2 tokens or anything like that, but I'm going to give like the realistic case for these things and how they're actually going to accrue value long term, and how the fact of the matter is that most of them are not going to outperform ETH. Like, I just truly believe that over the longer term. But I'll save all of those opinions for next week when I do this podcast with Bankless. So definitely keep an eye out for that. I'll let you guys know all about that. But yeah, just to recap, May 23rd is the only date to worry about when it comes to the spot ETH ETFs. And I think that from today, we're basically starting the hype around it, because of the fact that we're seeing some back and forth between the SEC and the issuers, which is basically, it's what, February now, February, March, April into May. You got 3 to 4 months here. We're going to start seeing this ramp up as we get to kind of that period there. But yeah, exciting times for ETH on the horizon here. Now, of course, moving on to everything Dencun. So, of course, yesterday we had the Holesky testnet fork to Dencun. It did so, very, I guess, normally. There was no issues with it. It did it very smoothly, and it finalized. And yeah, as far as I know, there was no issues, not even with participation rates. So I think like 5% wasn't updated or something, which is basically nothing, obviously. So yeah, all well and good to get a mainnet date. Now, the fun thing is that the mainnet date is being set today, but I'm recording the refuel about 3 hours before the all core devs call happens. So I get to speculate on when the mainnet date is going to be. And right now, I'm going to say the time is 9:55 p.m. my time. It is happening at between 1 and 2 a.m. my time. When the all-core devs call happens, the refuel will go live before this. Maybe you'll watch me give this prediction before that. But even if you don't, I'm going to give my prediction anyway. I have no inside information on this. There is no inside information to be had. It literally is just the core devs getting on the public call. They discuss it for a bit, and they're like, okay, we feel comfortable about setting the date here. So my guess is basically, I'm going to give a window. I can't give a date here. I mean, maybe I'll give a date as well, just to see how close I get. But my guess is early March at this stage, and the main reason is because it's usually about 4 weeks after the date is announced that you get it going live to give people time to update their nodes. But the last 2 testnets have forked through just very smoothly. It's been a very, very smooth process. There's a lot of confidence. Blobs are working. Everything's working just fine. So I don't foresee them wanting to extend it out much longer than this. I want to get this onto mainnet. Once that's on there, they can 100% shift focus to Petra, which is obviously shaping up to be quite an important upgrade to the network. So yeah, I'm going to give a window here of early March. And in terms of a date, I will say, if I had to say a date, it could see, this is the thing, like I said in the Discord channel, that it could happen as early as like late Feb, like really early March. But I was thinking more about it, and I'm like, I'm still kind of more on the side of early March. Like, I'm erring on the side of early March. But as for an actual date, I'm just looking at the calendar here because I want to look at the actual day of the date here. I'm gonna say the 5th of March, Tuesday, the 5th of March. That's my official prediction. As I said, like, I'm recording this 3 hours before the all core devs call happens, so I don't know what it actually is. 5th of March. Let's see how close I get. That's going to be fun there. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, guys, Dencun is finally almost here. I'm super excited to see blobs go live finally. It's been in the works for a very long time, and I'm excited to see what the transaction fees are going to look like on the L2s, what happens with blobs in the short term. Like, are people going to spam it with inscriptions, and then that kind of tapers off, and then the L2s or the roll-up specifically take over, and they start using that instead of call data. I'm excited to see like how fast we actually increase the size of the blobs and increase the number of blobs on the network, and how the network actually handles all of this from a stability perspective. I'm hyped, guys. I'm always hyped around Ethereum upgrades. I mean, I was even hyped about Chappella almost a year ago now, which was basically just enabling staking withdrawals on the network. It wasn't anything like too exciting, but I was hyped about it back then because it killed a lot of those bad narratives. Remember the bad narratives back then where everyone's like, Chappelle's going to go live and there's going to be a mass kind of like mass unstaking event on Ethereum. When in reality, I think it was like 90% of the ETH that was unstaked belonged to Kraken's retail users who were forced to unstake due to the SEC action against Kraken. And then we just saw a massive uptick in staking. And now with the advent of restaking, obviously with Eigenlayer, and then all these liquid restaking token projects, I don't see any reason for like the ETH stake rate to go down any big way from here. Maybe once the market gets crazy and people want to start taking profits, and then there's arbitrage opportunities with these LSTs and LRTs and the beacon chain, you might see that happening. But I mean, really, it's already at such a large kind of a large amount of ETH stake. You can see here that Hill Dobby said, 25% of all ETH is now staked. I expect this to keep going up because obviously we're in the process of transitioning from like ETH to like liquid staking ETH or liquid staked ETH or liquid restaked ETH as being the asset that people want to hold. So basically they've got ETH, they want to hold ETH, but then they don't want to just hold vanilla ETH. They want to get exposure to the, ETH staking yield. They want to get exposure to any potential restaking yield. They want to get exposure to any potential airdrops. So this is going to keep happening, which means that more and more ETH is going to get staked. What effect that has on the price? I do think it's going to have a very positive effect because it's demand for ETH, it's locking up ETH. But then these things are derivatives too, right? There is LSTs and LRTs. So it's going to be interesting to see where the volume shift, where the liquidity shifts, and what this percentage of staked ETH actually settles on, because there are some, I guess, changes coming to the ETH staking issuance rate, which basically means that at a certain point, it doesn't really make much sense to stake ETH anymore, and that's by design because you don't want to overload the network. At some point it just becomes diminishing returns. As I've discussed with you guys before, the real kind of advantage or the real security comes from the node operators on the network and increasing the number of those. If we're just kind of putting more ETH into Coinbase and more ETH into more other centralized staking service providers, it doesn't actually do anything for the network beyond adding kind of some marginal economic security. What does much more is having independent node operators, and that's why I've been a big supporter of all these other kind of projects coming online recently and taking market share away from players like Coinbase and even Lido in order to decentralize out that and increase the amount of node operators on the network there. But yeah, anyway, Dencun is coming, guys, coming very, very soon. I think that when is it? As I said, March 5th is my official kind of guess right now. We're going to see how close I get. Even if I get it wrong, if I'm within 3 days, give or take, I'll be pretty happy with that guess there. Because I think I got it really wrong last year when I said it would happen in November, but I've been pretty consistent about early to mid-March for a long time now. So let's see if I'm right about the dates there. Anyway, moving on from that, I'll be back tomorrow, obviously, to discuss all of that once the all core devs have their call and everything. Moving on to an announcement from the Ethereum Foundation today. So Josh Davies here from the Ethereum Foundation basically said, excited to announce the launch of the Ethereum Protocol Fellowship Study Group, or the EPF SG, a 10-week series designed to guide the next gen of Ethereum core developers. You can dive deep into the protocols and mechanics with all the existing kind of core developers and researchers here. So if you are interested in being part of this 10-week program that runs from February 19th to April 29th, you can register. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. This is an open and permissionless participation. There's only a part-time commitment and free of charge. And you are basically going to be across all things core development and research, with the main focus being these kind of topics here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. Some of them include things like MEV, sharding, Vertical tree, so on and so forth. So yeah, you can definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Obviously, the pool of people that this is for is going to be relatively small because core development and research is a very demanding kind of part of the Ethereum stack. is definitely something that I think requires a lot of commitment, and it definitely requires a lot of prerequisite knowledge. But at the same time, I don't think that that should be something that dissuades you. I think that if you have, if you feel confident and you feel like you want to get involved with this, definitely just apply anyway. And as I said, I'll link this in the YouTube description below, and you can go check it out and apply it for yourself. All right, so there was a couple of things that happened yesterday around, I guess, like MEV Boost as a whole and like relayers and how they play within this. So Protos here put out a thread saying, mainnet is having lots of invalid blocks coming from the same builder. The relay should never broadcast blocks without verification. We should consider including ePBS in Electra. Please raise support for this to be discussed in all core devs call. Now, ePBS obviously has been on the Ethereum roadmap for quite a while now, and it is basically enshrining MEV Boost into the Ethereum protocol so that it doesn't exist as a sidecar. Now, Nixo here quote tweeted Protos and basically explained further what actually happened. So Bloxroute was relaying invalid rsync blocks in optimistic mode, and Bloxroute's post-submission verification was failing. They then disabled optimism on that builder, which means that validators can continue as normal for now as Bloxroute investigates what went wrong on their end. Now, I'm going to break this down in plain English for you guys. Bloxroute is a MEV Boost relayer. They are part of the relayers such as Ultrasound Money and Flashbots. They're just one independent relayer. Bloxroute is a company. They run a relay. So what they were doing was they were relaying invalid blocks that were being built by rsync. So rsync is a block builder. And if you go to relayscan.info, you can actually see all of the, relayscan.io, I'll bring it up here. You can actually see this. So you can see here rsyncbuilder.xyz. They currently build around 10.6% of all Ethereum blocks. So not a small player in the builder market. And then on the left-hand side here, you can see Bloxroute has two relays, the max profit and regulated relay, that 25% and 17% share respectively here. So what Bloxroute was doing was relaying invalid blocks that were kind of proposed by the rsync builder, which led to a few invalid blocks being kind of put into the network and basically being proposed on the network here. Now, this is done. This was able to be done because essentially, at least from my understanding, what it means to optimistically relay blocks is that you assume that these blocks are going to be valid, and then you don't check them on your end. And the reason why this is done is because it increases profits to do it this way, because you don't have to basically run the verification on the block yourself. You can just optimistically assume that it's fine. But in order to incentivize people not to play games with that, there's like a bond that's posted in order to do this, and that happens in the background. And then those builders are punished if they do this sort of thing. Now, of course, this started discussion around, as Poto says here, getting ePBS included sooner rather than later, but at the same time, Mike Nutter posted a post today on ETH Research, not on ETH Research Forum, just on the notes section of the ethereum.org website here, basically saying that there was a bit of misunderstanding here. So ePBS doesn't actually solve this issue. It doesn't change anything about this issue. The end state is basically the same. And you can actually read this post, and I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But the TLDR is that ePBS does not solve for builder bugs. The slots would have been missed regardless. Best case ePBS, the proposer payment is faster and trustless. And worst case ePBS, bypassability reverts us to the same trust model as today. So ePBS still has a benefit here, is that like the proposer payment is faster and trustless, but at the same time, it's not going to solve builder bugs generally, right? Which is logical, because builders are still existing outside of the protocol in an ePBS world. We're basically just enshrining the relayer part of the MEV Boost kind of of the MEV Boost network here, from my understanding. But you can go give this a read. It's not that long of a post. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And I believe Protos also has a tweet reply to this as well. There's a bit of debate happening here between these core developers and researchers, so you can go check that out. But that hopefully explains to you guys what happened here. I mean, it was a bit muted, I think, because it happened. When did it happen? It happened like yesterday, but like it was such a complex in the weeds thing. Not many people were paying attention to it. I think originally some people were saying that, is there a bug in like Geth that we've just finalized on? And I think for like a split second, some people had like mini heart attacks, right? Because that's the thing that we've been talking about recently, about if there was like a bug in Geth that we finalized on, then we're in for a world of hurt. But it was nothing that nefarious. It was nothing that bad. It was just got to do with these this builder as part of the MEV Boost network. So yeah, you can go check out all of that. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Mike Nutter also has another post here unrelated to ePBS, but this post is all about inclusion lists. So inclusion lists are getting more and more attention recently. It is something that Mike has been spearheading for quite a while now, and you guys know that inclusion lists is one of the solutions to censorship on the Ethereum network, at least one of the things that allows us to increase the censorship resistance guarantees of the Ethereum Layer 1 network. So the TLDR of this document is that it presents a minimal view of what a potential spec for EIP 7547, which is the inclusion list EIP, could look like. We outline changes to the execution specs, consensus specs, and execution APIs to clarify how the pieces fit together. These changes are in draft mode, and the goal of this document is to relay all the information about these changes. Now, of course, this is something that's really geared towards core developers and researchers and maybe people that want to keep up to date with all of that in the weeds. It is definitely not something that I would recommend for the layman to read. I mean, I'm not going to say that I understand the whole thing reading it through here, but you can actually look at this diagram, which does a pretty good job of explaining what block production looks like in an inclusion list world. If you already know what it looks like in the current world, then this will just be something that you can pick up on pretty quickly, but there's a nice little diagram for you there that I'll link in the YouTube description below. But Mike has been on fire lately, actually, Mike Nutter. He has spearheaded two of the most kind of important EIPs in recent memory, which is inclusion lists and the max effective balance increase. He's also across everything got to do with PBS and MEV boost and censorship resistance on the network. He's just a machine, and he honestly came out of nowhere. I mean, he hasn't been around for that long, as far as I know, in the Ethereum research and development kind of circles. I think maybe a year or two at this stage. So, and the reason why I bring this up is because it just goes to show that if you have the drive, if you have the willingness to kind of like to learn the things about the Ethereum core protocol, if you have the willingness to kind of put this work out there and to basically dive into the weeds of all this stuff, then you can very quickly make a name for yourself and make a very prominent name for yourself, which is exactly what Mike has done here, among other people. You know, there's plenty of other people that have done this. Another one that comes to mind is Domothy. And if you've been in the Daily Gwei Discord channel for a while, you know that Domothy basically was very active in there early on, and then went on to be a core researcher that's now across things like MEV burn and a bunch of other things. He's done podcasts with Bankless before. He's also, a really, really great recent, I guess, Ethereum researcher developer the last couple of years. But more and more of these people are going to pop up, guys. Like, as I've said before, Ethereum is the ultimate nerd snipe. There are so many hard problems within Ethereum that need to be solved, and these people just want to work on and solve hard problems. They want to be part of the solution, and they want to have their names, I guess, etched in the Ethereum history books, and I think that's obviously one of the things that drives a lot of us that are very involved within Ethereum. We want to definitely be part of history and definitely, be across all of these challenges and try to do our kind of best to help them along. But anyway, you can go give this document from Mike a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, Jasper is back with a pretty big blog post / tweet thread today, all about how Rocketpool and Eigenlayer are going to create a kind of synergistic relationship going forward. So he calls this hybrid theory, which I think is a reference to one of Linkin Park's albums. And he says Rocketpool's middle way between native liquid restaking and pure staking. Now, I'll let you guys read the blog post for yourself. It's pretty lengthy, and there's also an accompanying tweet thread, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But essentially, the TLDR of this is that Rocketpool, in this design, Rocketpool will be able to basically offer the safest way to restake your ETH, because in a worst case scenario where I think Jasper actually highlights this in his tweet thread, where he goes, in the worst case scenario where everyone's getting slashed everywhere, Eigenlayer ABSs are getting slashed, there's a bug or something, and Ethereum validators are getting slashed. If you're in Rocketpool, if you're holding ETH, and if you're a node operator, you are basically safest out of all of the other people holding different LRTs and LSTs and node operators in the ecosystem. And he explains why in his blog post and tweet thread. I'm not going to try and summarize it because it's not going to do it justice. It was a really great read. I read both the tweet thread and the blog post, and Jasper really knows his stuff when it comes to discussing Rocketpool. Obviously, I would call him a Rocketpool maxi, definitely, and definitely one of the most active people in the Rocketpool community. And I'm sure he's probably going to talk about this, or at least it's going to be covered on Whack Whack Attacks show the Rocket Fuel show that he does, and then there's the weekly Orbit show that Whack Whack does as well, that you can go check out. It's on their YouTube channel, the Rocket Fuel YouTube channel, which you can just search up. I've talked about it a bunch of times on the Refuel before. I'm sure they'll dive deeper into this, but if you want to read it for yourself, I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And I think Rocketpool's going to have a renaissance this year. They've got their new designs kind of being worked on right now, and I think I discussed them last week about these really exciting new designs about allowing people to become node operators without having to stake RPL. I think the RPL tokenomics are going through a complete rewrite, which is definitely very bullish, I think, for the project, and definitely very exciting for the project, but this stuff will take time to build. So I think this year is going to be a really great year of just building for Rocketpool and getting these upgrades out there, and then flowing into next year, it's really going to supercharge the Rocketpool network. And I mean, Rocketpool still has, a pretty large market share. I think 2.9% still. Yeah, around 2.9%. And Rocketpool as an ecosystem has by far the most independent node operators, by far, like thousands of independent node operators here. So when you kind of look at it from that perspective and you look at it compared to others out there, they're still far and away the most decentralized liquid staking protocol on Ethereum. And I think that with these upgrades that they've got coming to the Rocketpool network, as well as the synergies that they can create with Eigenlayer, Rocketpool stands to grow really well over the next couple of years. All right, moving on, just wanted to quickly highlight a new guide from Remy Roy here, who is a frequent participant in the ETH staker community. So he wrote a guide on how to migrate to a larger disk for an Ethereum validator. So if you are a node operator, if you run Ethereum validators and full nodes locally on your own hardware, this guide is for you, because it basically tells you how to migrate from, maybe you have a 2 terabyte SSD right now, maybe you want to upgrade that to a 4 terabyte SSD, and you don't want to have to go through the cumbersome process of basically, resyncing everything and copying everything over and basically going through the whole process again. You won't have to do that, or at least if you do have to do that, depending on the client that you're using, you can do it in a much easier way by following this guide. And this is a step-by-step guide. It's very detailed. I had to skim over it. I mean, I haven't had to do this yet. I kind of future-proofed myself. All of my machines, except one, have a 4 terabyte or more or larger drive in them. And I think that in saying that, 2 terabyte drive is still fine, even with blobs, because blobs are pruned after 18 days or whatever the days are. I think it's 18 days. I keep saying I can't remember the exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's 18 days, and they're pruned, which means that I think that it'll only add an extra 20 or 30 gig during that period, and then it gets pruned, or basically 20, 30 gig net for the whole chain there. So you should still be fine on a 2 terabyte drive, but maybe you definitely want to kind of increase up to 4 terabytes just to continue future-proofing yourself, especially because a 4 terabyte SSD is definitely cheaper than it historically has been, and it just keeps getting cheaper over time. So yeah, this guide is for you if this applies to you. So I'll link this in the YouTube description below, and you can go check this out for yourself. All right, last up here, we just have an update from Fluent. Just a reminder here, Fluent is a project building a ZK WASM L2 on Ethereum, and I'm an advisor to Fluent. Just wanted to disclose that there. But today they launched 2 key developments expanding the functionality of Fluent's private testnet. They now have 100% EVM compatibility and an improved Rust SDK. And they say here, this brings us one step closer to unified smart contracts written in different programming languages. And they have a bit of a thread here that you can go check out for yourself. So, I think that if you are someone who obviously is interested in developing smart contracts in something like Rust, you should definitely check out Fluent and check out their SDK here. And if you're interested in being part of obviously a emerging ecosystem that is non-solidity, I guess, and non-EVM, because as I said, it's like ZK WASM with EVM support, so it's not just strictly EVM. It's very similar to what I guess Arbitrum is doing with Arbitrum Orbit, right? You should definitely go check this out. But right now, it's really just for developers. I think that you can join their early builders program here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. I don't know if there's any way to get involved as a user just yet, other than kind of following the project, joining the Discord, or engaging on Twitter, stuff like that. But generally, yeah, I mean, if you're a user or a developer, you can go check this out. I think it's just more geared towards developers right now, but I'll link that in the YouTube description below for you to check out, of course. But I think that's the last update for today. I just realized I have no Farcaster tabs open today, and that's because I had so many other kind of Twitter tabs open, and it was getting really, really long, and I'm just you know what? I'll just leave it at that for today, because I was going to go over time if I didn't. I think I'm right up almost at 30 minutes here, so I think I'm going to leave it at that for today, but we'll be back tomorrow. So yeah, thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.